Hi there folks, so this is the setup for using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. When you take them out from the store, you'll get them in a bag like this, and this bag is much bigger than what you actually need for these cameras. However, they do give lots of compartments, and we're going to go through that now. It's really important that when you take this equipment out, it looks how it looks right now, and when you bring it back looking how it looks right now, ready for the next person to use the equipment. I'll start off with the front of the bag, what's located here. So this is on the front lip. In this zipped compartment right here, I know it's very close, this is where we store the SD card reader, and they're only small, so please make sure these SD card readers go back into this zip up compartment and they actually zip lock. Right at the front is where the camera is located, so I'm going to take this out now so I can use that later on. Please make sure that the lens hood is in there. And if you are going to when you are using it, take this off and leave it in the bag so that it doesn't get lost, because these are really easy to lose. Further in the bag here, you've got two compartments for the batteries. We give you two of these batteries. These should give the cameras around about 60 minutes of use. So with two of them in there, you've got 2 hours of usage if you're filming something like an event or something that's taking longer than just your quick cuts of your short films. So you've got two batteries in the middle. At this side, there is nothing. And at this side, there is your sun filter, your sun hood, if you like. Over here, you've got your microphone, and this pocket just contains the microphone. So please make sure that that is in there. And really vitally on this side, you've got your new pair of Sony headphones that we keep tucked in there. And underneath that, something which you'll probably never use, is the DC charger to charge the battery that's kept inside the camera, not to charge these two big batteries which you have here. These need to come back to the store. So if these need charging, bring them back to college. If you just want to use the internal battery of the camera, that can be charged using this wall charger. All this can also give you continuous power if you're doing an event that's even longer than 2 hours that you would use these for. So we're going to show you the camera first, and then the microphone and the batteries and what have you. So I'm going to get these out now and just put them to one side. Okay, so there's quite a lot to go through with this camera, so I'm going to sort of split it up into things. I think the main things to go over is just kind of like what the camera looks like and the sort of the body that you can expect to see. So on each of these Pocket Blackmagic Cinema cameras, you've got the top handle here. This contains this which takes these batteries here. Now, when you start to modulate these cameras, they do get quite big and heavy, so it's really important to sort of know how everything goes and what you should take off and what you shouldn't take off. As a general rule of thumb, don't remove anything, and you'll see various signs and things like that talking about it. This camera in particular that we're using actually has the top mount screwed in, but the others that we have are actually just sort of fixed in, which can be removed. Please don't remove them because it sort of messes with all of the wiring. It's really important that these feed the camera extra power, and so that actually comes in through this port here. These cannot be tugged off, they can't be removed easily. To remove them, you do have to get your finger in there and pull this little sleeve up, and then that'll release the whole unit. But please don't do that, because like I said, the reason it's there is to give you power, so there should be no reason that you need to remove them. That being said, while we're over here, you can also see that we do have an XLR, mini XLR connector there for more audio. We also have the HDMI input there, and the headphone port and the microphone port. So when you plug in that microphone in later on, that's the port you want to put it. And then when you're monitoring your audio for the headphones, that's where you can plug them in as well. So this is sort of the side view of the Blackmagic. Hidden at the front or at the top here are the buttons that you're going to use the most regularly, but they are hidden by this cage. The cage is designed to protect the camera if it's dropped or knocked. But obviously it won't protect it properly, fully. It just protects it for the most part. So you can find all those little bits and bobs under here. This is actually how you switch the camera on. It's a bit difficult to see there. It's a tiny little switch, and when you turn it to the right, it turns the camera on, as you can see here. And you've got 3 buttons, which we'll talk about and look at in a little bit as well. On the top here, much like the other cameras, you've got ISO, you've got shutter and white balance buttons dedicated there. You've also got the record button here and a picture function there. Don't recommend you take pictures and video at the same time, because it sort of messes up how you can preview things, which we'll look at again at a later stage. If you're doing selfies or you're doing anything where you're filming yourself, there's also another record button there, which is easily accessible from the front. And you've got your lens here to obviously zoom in. That's that ring there. And to focus, you've got that ring there. On the side of the lens, you've got your power iOS, which stands for stabilization. So if you're walking around or doing anything with movement, make sure that that's switched on. And yeah, that's the only button that's on the side of the camera there. So moving around to this side of the camera, this is where the SD card is located. And if I just pull this towards me like that, it pops out and then lifts up, and you got your SD card in there. Make sure that there is an SD card in there every time that you use the camera, because sometimes people can forget to put them in there. While we're talking about SD cards, the first thing you should do is format the card. So let's talk about formatting the card on the Pocket Blackmagic cinema cameras. So the first thing to note is to format it. It's all touchscreen, is this screen. You've got this button here. If you click on this, you can see the Format SD card option. You click on that. Make sure that exFAT is selected and not OSX Extended. OSX Extended is for Macs, and we don't use Macs at the college. We only use Windows. So make sure that exFAT is selected. Click Format SD card, and again, and then you hold it for 3 seconds. It gives you all the instructions. So if you follow the instructions on the screen, you should be good to go. And then essentially that is how you format the SD card, ready to be used for your filming activities. It takes a little bit of time if the person before it has used it for a little bit. Okay, and then to come out of this screen, we're just going to press exit there, and it brings us to our front page. So when we're operating this camera, obviously just like the other cameras that we've used, you have full manual control of all these areas. It's a nice big screen, but unfortunately it doesn't swivel, so you are sort of locked into this position. You've got the option here where it says FPS to change that. You get lots of selections, so you can do 30, you can do 25, 24, all the way up to 60. So again, depending on what frame rate you want to use, you can select that. These cameras should be set to shutter angle, which is great because your shutter angle should just be 180 degrees, so you don't need to change that. And the iris is the aperture of the lens, which again will give you more or less light. Okay, so let's talk about how to actually insert the big battery. So the little battery that's in the camera won't give you that much lifespan at all. They're really rubbish. They give you about 20 minutes, which is why we invested in these bigger ones that give you 60. What you want to do is just make sure that you line these 2 pins up here with the top of this and insert it, and you can see that little light's gone green. And now when we look at the back of the camera, we can see there that it's now saying AC power, which is what you want to see. When that gives you a percentage, that's when this battery's probably run out of charge, and then it's relying on the battery that's internal. If you do want to check how much charge is on these batteries, you're just going to click this button, and you can keep an eye on it as you're filming throughout the time that you're spending on the camera. So that's all now connected. Makes it a bit more difficult to hold from this top handle, but if you're using it on a gimbal, that'll be nice and counterbalanced. So let's quickly look at some of the settings that we've got on this camera to use it fully. So once you've set all of your iris, shutter speed, frames per second, and the ISO, and all that kind of good stuff, and white balance and what have you, we can now look at making sure that the card is ready to be recorded too. So if we click on these options that you've got here, there's 3 little lines there. This brings you to your menu screen. You want to always avoid filming in Blackmagic RAW, purely because our cards and our space at the college don't permit it, purely because they're too big. So make sure ProRes is selected, and any of these formats are good to go. HQ is obviously the highest quality, and then everything under that is lesser quality. Obviously, the higher the quality you film in, the less time you will get on these cards. So you can see there that says 17 minutes. Just stop recording for a second. And if I go back into the menu, for example, and go back down to proxy and come out of there, you can see that we get 84 minutes. So depending on which codec you select will depend on how much time you get to use the SD card and the media that you're recording. On the next page, I've just selected that by clicking on these little arrows. We'll get onto all these at a later stage because these are more advanced settings that you don't necessarily need to get onto when you're first using it. I will go onto the monitor page though, as it is all turned off at the moment, but these just help you with things that you can use with this camera to make life a bit easier. So I would turn on focus assist. That will give you a little colored line around things to make sure that they're focused properly. I would turn zebras on because this helps you with exposure. I would turn the grid on because this will help you with your rule of thirds, and everything else you can leave off. Audio, this is at the moment recording straight into the camera, and in just a moment I'll go through how to change your audio settings with a microphone attached. As you can see right now, the audio is peaking, and you can also see this on the main page at the bottom here as well. So without further ado, let's get on to audio. Okay, so I've now got the microphone attached to the Blackmagic. I've switched it on. It's a bit tricky to see with all of the setup that's on there, but you can just about see the green light there. I've also got it set to the furthest right setting because obviously in the middle is plus 10 dB, which you might not want. So we're going to start off with the microphone picking up the least volume it needs. And if I look on the back of this, obviously there it's connected to. And now I've not got my headphones in, so I'm not monitoring anything right now. But ultimately, we're just sort of like ready to go, setting it up. So to set up our audio, I'm going to jump back into the menu screen. Audio is selected at the top. And I'm going to cycle across, and you get lots of different options. XLR line is for that XLR input that's there. We don't want that. What we want to do is just keep going across until we get to 3.5mm line. It's not that one. It should be 3.5mm mic. So now we can see as I click, the 3.5 left mic is picking up audio from this. You can kind of see the difference. The microphones on the camera are over here. So I'm just going to do the same, just cycle the opposite way there. And so now we get that. Now the beauty of this camera is you've also got gain options here. So you can see increasing that to 200% as I'm clicking, the audio is now peaking into red. If it goes into red, that means that it's too hot, and that means that you need to turn down the audio somehow, which is why using the gain features here is really useful. And you can see they're turning that down to 0. There's nothing coming in through that channel. This is really useful because what this means on your film sets is that you can create a safety track. So what a safety track is, if somebody coughs or shouts louder than you expect them to, if you have one of your tracks set to like 30%, yes, it'll be a little bit less than the other channel, but if you get something unwanted happening through sounds, a motorbike driving past or something like that, you can actually switch to that other channel in post-production and it's not going to affect anything. So if you are setting up an external microphone, you are going to need to go into the audio page and tell the camera where it is you want to actually pick the audio up from. And as we've said earlier on, if you're really struggling to get audio, if this is still really showing up as really low, you can always increase the decibels on the top of here as well. So you get lots of different options there. So that's just one way to set up the microphone, the most common way that you're going to find setting up microphones this year. And now that's all set up, this camera is ready to start recording the audio, as you can see there. And it's coming through the correct microphone. So that wraps up the first things that you should do when using this camera. There's all those 3 things that we've just looked at in this video lined up next to each other. There will be further videos coming up in the future to go into the more advanced settings with this camera, because as this is a cinema camera that's used on feature films through Hollywood and whatnot, it can do a whole lot more than we've looked at today. But just to get you started and using the camera, this should be enough to get going. Enjoy using it, folks. Speak to you soon.